set up a wireless access point. You guys have already seen that to be able to connect to your access point, you will need to first of all connect it to a computer. A wireless access point will always have a DHCP server installed on it as well. So as soon as you connect it to your laptop, desktop, whatever, you'll have to use a cable though. It will then give your computer an IP address, and it will have its own IP address. You can normally find those details if you turn the access point upside down. It will have a sticker that will tell it what is its IP address, what's its default username, and what's its default password. So you physically connect your access point to your device. You will then get an IP address from the access point. You then open up a web browser, Chrome, Firefox, whichever one you like to use, and then you'll type in the IP address in the search bar. So instead of going to google.com, you type in the IP address of the actual access point. It will then connect to the access point and should ask you for a username and password. Because I've previously connected to this access point, it automatically has logged me in. You then have access to your access point, and you can then start configuring it. Okay. So, like I said, going to be using TP-Link to show you how to configure an access point. You go to the TP-Link site. You then go to the support link up here. And once you're on the support page, you scroll the way down and you look for something called the TP-Link emulators. Okay, these are the actual software that is provided by this website that showcases all of the access points that they design and built. So I'm going to be looking for a very basic access point, one that's both an ADSL router and a wireless access point, because that's most likely the type of device that you guys will be setting up at this level of network technician. So I'm just going to choose one of them. It doesn't really matter which one. Okay, and it will then bring up, like I've just connected and I've showed you previously how to connect to it. So I'll have to type in the default username and password. As you can see, this one automatically wants me to type in a new password at the same time. So we'll just use admin as the password. Okay, it doesn't like us to use admin, so let's do a more complicated, fancy username and password, just so that it can be happy. Okay, should be happy now. Okay, it's still failing. Maybe it doesn't like the username admin. Let's try the username Andre. So you can see some of these things can be very experimental. Okay, this one is too much work. We're just going to skip that step for now. Okay. When we actually now have entered the access point, you will always find at least two little links. A basic link, which is basic commands of setting up your stuff, and it will have an advanced link where you have a lot more settings, and always there will also be a third one called a quick setup. Now, the quick setup is the one I normally show you guys because that's the easiest way to set up a access point. But if you want to add more details, if you want to add more settings, better encryption levels, you will either go to the basic or the advanced menu. Okay, but I'll show you how the quick setup one works. So doing quick setup, as you can see, the first thing is ask us is our time zone. We're in South Africa here, so we'll select GMT +2 because that is what our time zone is. And we'll click on next. Then it will ask us how are we connected to the internet. Remember, this is both an ADSL router and a wireless access point. Okay, so because we're using ADSL, I'm telling you guys right now, ADSL always uses what we call PPPoE, or the point-to-point over Ethernet protocol. That's the software that ADSL uses. So because I'm setting up ADSL, I'm choosing PPPoE. Okay, so I then click next. It will then ask me for the username and password. This, of course, will be provided to you by your ISP, be it Telkom, NWAP, AfriHost, whatever ISP you're using. They will provide you with a username and password that you'll have to type in here. Just so that you guys know, this is not a valid username, so don't try and steal it. Okay, it's just an example. So I'll type that in and click on next. And now I've done the first part. I've basically now set up my ADSL router. And that's it. It's just those three things that you have to do to set up an ADSL router. You have to, first of all, type in a time zone, select PPPoE, and then lastly, type in the username and the password. And job is done. Okay. The second part of the setup is actually setting up your wireless. Now, as you guys can see here, this router was not actually designed to run in South Africa because we've chosen South Africa here. So to get now through this, we would have gone through a couple more steps. Basic steps would have been, as you can see here, even though it's grayed out, I would have given a name to the access point. The name is the same name that if you click down here on your access point in Windows, the names that will pop up, these are what we call the SSIDs. Fancy name for the security name. Okay, the device name. So we can have the device name in there. We will then select a password that the user will need to type in to connect to this access point. You guys all know how that works. I'm pretty sure all of you have connected to a wireless access point in some time of your life. So you select the name and then you have to type in the password. This is the screen where I'll have to set that password up. Another screen after this would have been me having to set an encryption level. Okay, now I'm going to show you that doing the advanced button because I want to show you guys these features. Okay, so if we go here to wireless settings, you can see here we would have typed in the name, whatever name you want to give your wireless access point, and then we would have chosen a security level. Okay, where you basically have web, WPA for enterprise, WPA for personal, and then no security. If I select no security, I have no password that is required to connect to this access point, plus I don't encrypt any data traveling on that network. So we definitely don't want to do that for any access point we set up. We always want to choose an encryption level. We never choose web. And the reason we don't choose WEP is a very old standard, encryption standard that has been broken. Okay. Anybody with any computer and 5 minutes can actually read data that's been encrypted with WEP. So we always choose WPA2, be it either personal for home or small offices, or enterprise if we're running big, massive networks. So let's say we'll choose WPA2 for personal. It will then ask us for a password. This is now the password that the person will have to type in if they want to connect to the access point itself. And you can see it also asks us for different versions of WPA. We always want to choose WPA2. And what type of encryption do we want to use? TKIP or AES. You can also leave it on auto. Most of the time though, we'll choose AES because it's the more advanced encryption level. We just have to make sure that all devices in that network supports AES. Okay, otherwise we have to go with the older version, TKIP. The last little thing that we can normally then play around with is the transmitting power, where we have 3 settings, low, middle, or high, and that's just how far the signal will travel. If I put it on high power, I'll have a long range. If I put it on middle power, shorter, and if I put it on low power, very short range. We do this so that we don't have signals going outside of the building. We don't want to provide wireless to the guy in the street. That's not needed. Hey, we only want to provide power or wireless signal for the people inside the building and maybe just outside of the building if they're going to go have tea in the garden or something like that. So we'll change our transmitting power according to what range we want to provide. And that's basically then how we set up a wireless access point. Give it a name, choose a security level, type in a password, choose a transmitting level, and you are done. Everything else is much more advanced settings That will depend on the type of device you have. Cheap devices will have less features. More expensive devices will have more detailed features that you can use, set up. Like this one can have QoS, so it's got prioritization of data. This one has even got a built-in NAT device. It has a USB port that I can plug things into, like a 3G or a 4G modem. So this is a very fancy router. It even supports IPv6, and I can even do VPNs on this router. But the more cheaper ones won't have all of these very advanced features. They'll have very basic features. Okay,